Let's see. Hello, students. It is Mrs. Moore here wanting to talk to you about Jekyll and Hyde a bit. As you may remember, last week you took a Google quiz to make sure that you'd read the first half of the last chapter, and you turned in some work as well, and you have a big chunk of study questions due Monday. And there's also a quiz you're going to be taking on Monday on the second half of the chapter. So that's a big chunk, and that's why I gave you all week so you could sort of pace yourself. Let's see. I wanted to remind you of something. If you have a question for me about your work, the thing to do is email me directly. Use my school email, because if you comment a question on your assignment, I don't see it until I grade it. And so that may be too late. It's definitely going to be after it's due. So I've written it in the stream and I'm saying it again. You need to email me directly, and I will always get back to you on email within 12 hours usually. But if you comment on the assignment, think about it. I have to then go through every student I have, click on every assignment, right, to find questions. It's a wild goose chase. So what I would like to do now is talk to you about the chapter, Lanyon's narrative. This is one I just graded and returned to you. And the reason I want to talk to you about it is so that we can have some discussion. A lot of the questions that you've been doing at home from this point have been, first of all, I've been reading the chapters to you, and then they've been questions just to make sure we all understand the plot, because it's a mystery and there's a lot going on. But I want to talk about Lanyon's narrative with you because for the first time, the questions get more difficult and we're looking at the moral problem of what has really happened with Jekyll and Hyde. So I just want to look at these questions together and talk to you somewhat, especially if you're struggling to understand the book. And there's no shame in struggling to understand this book. As I said to you in class, it is a challenging book. It is a challenging book for students your age, but it's one of the main texts that you need to understand to be a literate person. It's right up there with Frankenstein when it comes to man versus science. What is it that man is trying to do? Is he trying to create human life from nothing? That's the point of Frankenstein. And just like in Jekyll and Hyde, Dr. Frankenstein, he won't tell us how he did it because he wants to keep us from making his mistake. But the point is, that is a book, actually, that Mary Shelley wrote kind of on a, not a dare, but it was a contest. Her husband was a poet, and she was with some of her literary friends, and they challenged each other to write a scary story, and she wrote Frankenstein, and I think she won the contest. But she, as a human being, had this vision to foresee some of these problems that would confront us as well, because creating human life, those are the very debates people have about stem cell research and whether that's moral or not. And so it is the kind of these are the questions that matter to us. Jekyll and Hyde, we know that Jekyll won't tell us exactly what he concocted, so we aren't going to go out and make those sorts of mistakes. But I wanted to talk to you about some of these questions that Dr. Jekyll poses for us, and I want to start here with Lanyon's narrative. So the first question I'd asked you was, what does Lanyon receive from Jekyll that surprises him? And it's a letter. A lot of you got this one right, and the reason it surprises him is because they don't write to each other. They're friends. They see each other. So a letter seems strange. Question 2, what's Jekyll's tone? What does he want Lanyon to do for him? And there are two parts. So first of all, Jekyll is, it seems to me it's a manipulative tone. You all had lots of answers, but he seems that he's laying this guilt trip on Lanyon to say, you have to help me, and I'm calling upon every favor you owe me. I have something you need to do for me. If not, I'll die. Gee whiz. You know, that feels like a guilt trip, a manipulative tone. But he wants him to go over to his house, get in his lab, get the drawer unlocked, take the contents, and then be at his house at midnight to receive the visitor who's going to request those powders or the drugs. Okay, so what does Jekyll insist may happen if Lanyon does not do these things? And we know it's that he'll either die, Jekyll will die, or he'll make a wreck of his reason. And it's like, and it'll be on your conscience. I roll my eyes at Jekyll at this point because who likes manipulative people? Good grief. But it's serious. We know it's serious too. He's having a serious problem. And we know now that we've read the whole book that the serious problem is that he being Jekyll can't stop turning into Hyde. And so he needs those drugs. What does Lanyon think of his friend as he reads the letter? He thinks he's nuts, but he's going to follow through anyway, because if you have a friend that you have a history with who hasn't been nuts and suddenly acts nuts, then you think, I'm going to indulge my friend at this time. Excuse me. This is my third lecture in a row I'm recording. I'm a little dehydrated. So, as Lanyon carries out his errand for Jekyll, he questions why he in particular must receive this visitor, and why must this be the case, knowing what we know. We know it's going to be Hyde, and we know there's going to be secrecy for Hyde because Hyde is wanted for murder. And we know that Lanyon is someone who hasn't yet seen Hyde, and so he can come to Lanyon without there being a lot of suspicion. Hyde would not be welcome in Jekyll's house at this point. He's wanted for murder, so there is a lot of suspiciousness surrounding him. The next question I asked you, 6. Now, I rely on a lot of quotes in these questions, and something I want you all to work on is understanding the question. Sometimes the question needs to be unpacked, decoded. And this isn't me, this is Robert Louis Stevenson. This is the author who has written with precise language, posing a precise question. So my advice to you students maybe would be to always rewrite the question in your own words. Pop out that dictionary wherever it may be. I'm looking for mine. I have things all over this table you would not believe. Mine isn't at hand, but you know what I do have at hand? For some reason, a puppet of an old man. And Happy Meal toy. Okay, so let's look at this language. Lanyon is repulsed by his visitor and says, at the time I set it down to some idiosyncratic personal distaste and merely wondered at the acuteness of the symptoms. Let's break it down. Let's break it down. Okay, something idiosyncratic, that means it's specific to you. So a mannerism a person has. Those of you guys who watch Friends, love Friends, I know a couple of you ladies in particular come with your hydro flasks with Friends stickers all over them. Rachel Green, what is her idiosyncrasy? What does she do often before she speaks? She clears her throat all the time, right? That is an idiosyncrasy that she has. We all have little habits that are unique to us that we do quite often. And so Lanyon thinks, maybe I find this visitor, who we know is Hyde, repulsive, yuck, because maybe it's just my own personal taste that's specific to me. And he says, I merely wondered at the acuteness of the symptoms. So something acute, it's like an acute angle, it's sharp. He thinks, why do I feel this distaste, like a physical pang? Have you ever felt a pang of conscience when you've done something wrong? You've said something wrong, you've hurt someone, and physically you feel it. I know I have. So he looks at this guy, Lanyon does, and he feels a physical revulsion. Okay, that's strong. But I have since had reason to believe the cause to lie much deeper in the nature of man, and to turn on some nobler hinge than the principle of hatred. So now Lanyon, we know, has been badly affected by what he's going to see here in a moment. Affected enough that we know it causes his death. But he has thought about, why did I feel this way when I saw Hyde? And it's not just personal distaste, but he thinks there's something noble in man, woman too, some noble thing within us that causes us to shrink from what is evil, okay? And call it a conscience. I had one of you students, you know who you are, say it's the Holy Spirit, which I thought was a very cool answer. Could be, right? Something with God, perhaps, within us that protects us, causes us to turn from what is wrong. Don't chew on a Kleenex. That's one of my dogs. Chewing on a Kleenex. That's not healthy. Okay. So I want you to think about that. Lanyon realizes maybe there's something within us that causes us physically to turn from what's harmful. You have ever heard of a gut reaction, a gut feeling to something? You're somewhere and suddenly your adrenaline just spikes and you know you're in the wrong place. And or something tells you not to trust someone. Maybe you have a story about a stranger rolling down a window. Hey, kid. And you felt that instant panic. Or you're on the street and someone is coming and you feel, ah. And we try not to prejudge people as humans, right? We try not to say that you feel bad about someone because of the way they're dressed or how they look or whatever it is. But sometimes we have those feelings. And Lanyon's theory is maybe this is something in our nature for self-preservation. And maybe like that student, I like the idea. Maybe if you want to think religiously, the Holy Spirit. That's pretty interesting. Okay. So how is the visitor dressed? What is his behavior like? He's rude, right? He's rude. He's impatient. Lanyon tries to get him to chit-chat, kind of tries to, it's like bringing out a cake, a birthday cake at a party for 4-year-olds, and then making them sit down and trying to give them a lesson on phonics. When they're like, we want cake. We are salivating. We are little beasts and we want cake. Hyde wants those drugs. He doesn't want to chit-chat with Lanyon. He's not going to make nice. So he's impatient. He's chomping at the bit, so to speak. That metaphor for, when a horse is going really hard, chomping at the bit. Okay? And he's dressed in fine clothes, but they're too big for him. And we know why. Because Jekyll had them on and he turned into Hyde. We know why. There are no more spoilers at this point, friends. We know, okay? So, after Hyde prepares his potion, he offers Lanyon a choice, okay? A choice which Lanyon calls an enigma. So if we look, some of you just guessed. And guys, there's no guessing when you have books. You just go to that section in the chapter and you see exactly what he says. Lanyon. Here we go. Okay. He says to him, this is page 117 in the text that we got from the school. He says, "And now," said he, this is Hyde, "to settle what remains. Will you be wise? Will you be guided? Will you suffer me to take this glass in my hand and go forth from your house without further parley? Or has the greed of curiosity too much command of you? So, are you going to be wise and have sense and just let me go my own way with my medicine? Or are you greedily curious and you want to see what happens? That is the question. Think before you answer, says Hyde, for it shall be done as you decide. As you decide, you shall be left as you were before, neither richer nor wiser, unless the sense of service rendered to a man in mortal distress may be counted as a kind of riches of the soul. So he's saying, if I leave, you stay as you are, and you won't have this extra richness of knowledge, of information, which Hyde feels like it's pretty good to be Hyde and to know these secrets, okay? Or if you shall so prefer to choose a new province of knowledge, and new avenues to fame and power shall be laid open to you, here in this room, upon the instant, and your sights shall be blasted by a prodigy to stagger the unbelief of Satan. Okay? I know, lots of words, guys, so I get why you guessed, but if you go to the text and decode it, and you just do that work and you break it down, you can figure things out. Now, my student who mentioned the Holy Spirit, I wonder if he's watching and listening and thinking, hey, that sounds like when Christ was tempted in the desert by Satan, or that sounds like the serpent talking to Eve. Will you come and have knowledge beyond your wildest dreams? Or as the serpent says to Eve, or as Satan says to Christ, will you be the king of all of this? Right? And think about that. Hyde is tempting Lanyon. Have you ever known something you wish you didn't know? I think we talked about this in class one time. You know, you find something. I don't know, a box or a text message, however you young people think, a mysterious TikTok, whatever. And you wish you didn't know it afterwards. Maybe it's some dark, dark secret, something painful about you or someone you love. You wish you didn't know it, but the temptation to know was so strong. It was irresistible. And so, an enigma is a puzzle. So Lanyon doesn't know what we know. And to him, he's been presented with a puzzle. Here's a guy he doesn't know who really wants his friend's drugs. And he's irritating and rude and boastful, kind of trash talking, right? And he calls it an enigma, okay? So, now then Hyde says, what follows, and this is question 9, is under the seal of our profession. This is where you need to think literally what this means. This is not a metaphor. They're doctors. They're doctors. And if something is sealed, it's kept closed. What sorts of things do doctors have to keep closed, right? They have to be confidential. They're not allowed to tell people secrets, right? And so Hyde is saying, what happens, what you see next, you as a doctor can't tell anybody. Top secret, okay? And I think one of you, in one of your answers, again, you know, as long as you're thinking and those juices are flowing, you're going to get some credit, right? But said, now I'm going to make you rich and famous. Well, not in the sense of they're not going to let anybody know about this. Rich in knowledge is different from rich in fame, or in this case, infamy, right? Okay. So you can't tell anybody what you're about to see. And after drinking the potion, question 10, who stands before Lanyon? Now we know Jekyll and Lanyon disagreed about science. So what does Hyde mean when he says, and now you who have so long been bound to the most narrow and material views, you who have denied the virtue of transcendental medicine, you who have derided your superiors, behold, okay? Trash talking, Hyde is talking that trash, okay? He's saying, you, Lanyon, you are narrow in your view of the physical world, of the abilities of science, of morality. You are narrow. You deny, you laugh. Derision is like a scornful laughter. You laughed at me. You denied the transcendental, and trans meaning across, to go across something. So if something transcends, this kind of science that allows you to change form, it transcends, it goes beyond the material world, it goes beyond anything we can understand. And he's saying, you have not believed me, you've teased me, and then he says, derided your superiors. It's like, mic drop, boom, I'm a better doctor, I'm a better scientist than you are, okay? And so, it's Jekyll too. Jekyll is also feeling triumphant to Hyde, okay? Lanyon only believed in what was possible. And now he's showing him something is possible beyond what he believed. All right? And now we want to talk about why this led to Lanyon's death. And now, a lot of you gave me very short answers. Fine, but think about this. Think about the way Lanyon felt when he saw Hyde. And he thinks there's something within us that rejects evil. And think about literally what he has seen. He has seen science enable a man to unleash his evil as a separate human being. Imagine if we could all be our worst selves. And we're going to talk about why. And these are questions you're struggling with now as you work on that homework for Sunday in reading the last chapter. Why Hyde wanted to do this. And I'm going to have another conversation like this with you once they're turned in. Perhaps I'll post it later in the week. But why why Jekyll wanted to do this. And we understand that we all have a dark side and a light side, right? We all have to learn self-control. Some of us have tempers. Some of us maybe can say nasty things. Some of us want to swipe that cookie we're not supposed to have or whatever. I know you're like, gee, Mrs. Moore, that's stupid. Fine. But you know what I'm saying. But imagine if all of us behaved roughly as we liked, without a conscience, without a fear of anyone condemning our behavior publicly, without fear of being sent to a certain guidance counselor or assistant principal's office, right? Imagine that, or being sent to the hallway, or all the things that we do at school, right? How we might behave. And so Lanyon has seen in the world science enabling unleashed evil. And he's seen it in his friend, someone whose judgment that he relied on, his old friend, comes to him and shows him this. And it's terrifying. He's looked evil in the face. So, it's a lot to talk about. I hope that's helping you in your understanding, guys. And I just want you to look at that and think about it as you continue to read and write. And I will, oh, that's right. What I want to do is give you a Google quiz that goes along with this video, because as a teacher, I have to ensure that you actually watch the videos I make for you, the lectures I make for you. So there will be a video in the stream that says Lanyon's narrative Google quiz that you'll need to do. At any rate, I miss you all. And again, email me directly with questions. I cannot say that enough. Take care. Toodaloo.